More now on our top story. Air Canada set to refund passengers who had their flights canceled because of the pandemic. A source confirming to CBC News the offer is part of the negotiations for a federal bailout package. Now, some passengers have been waiting nearly a year for their refunds. At a Commons Committee hearing last month, an Air Canada executive linked the refunds to a bailout. The airline's managing director of government affairs was also pressed on why the airline had not repaid travelers for flights that were canceled.
Can you explain to Canadians why it is that a corporation with billions of dollars can't fairly refund their customers for services that were never provided?
Our refund policy is compliant and in line with all CTA statements in order. We have abided by the terms and conditions of our tariff that are filed and approved by the Canadian Transportation Agency. We have refunded over $1.2 billion from the beginning of the pandemic.
So there you go, more than $1 billion in refunds. Now, the airline could not tell that committee just how much the non-refunded fares added up to, but the consumer advocate group Air Passenger Rights has its own estimate in terms of the number of travelers waiting for refunds, and it is a big number. The group's founder and president is with us this morning. Gabor Lukács is in Halifax. Gabor, good to see you on this morning. Thank you for giving us some time.
Good morning, Heather.
So there you heard CBC News sources telling us that Air Canada has indeed agreed to refund customers for flights canceled because of the pandemic. Let's just begin with your overall reaction to that.
This is a short-term victory for passengers and a long-term defeat for rule of law. The right to a refund has been a well-recognized fundamental right for passengers, and it's the commercial standard in any kind of commercial transaction. If the supplier, the vendor, is unable to provide services paid for, they have to repay that money. What we have seen nearly now for a year is that Air Canada is unlawfully holding on to passengers' money, and the government is turning a blind eye to that. The government has had all the tools to take enforcement actions, yet none were taken. That is something that should be a concern, not only in the short term for those who are owed refunds now, but overall to the reputation of Canada and to consumer affairs within Canada.
Interesting. Canada, the only of the G7 nations that has not given specific assistance to the airline industry as a result of the pandemic. Focus on the passenger, though, just for a moment. As you said, a short-term victory for them in terms of getting these refunds, as CBC News sources are telling us now. In terms of outstanding questions, I mean, is there anything that's still on your mind? There had been some issue about what types of tickets would be refunded, whether discount tickets would be part of that. What are some of the sticking points remaining for you?
For me, the most important point is why criminal charges have not been laid against those executives who have been approving the withholding and misappropriation of passengers' money. There are a number of laws that were broken. Some of them are simply summary offense. Some of them could possibly be more serious ones. Why there are no consequences for those decision makers that have been implicitly or explicitly approving what is clear misappropriation of passengers' money? That's the most important question that needs to be addressed, because right now it seems that the government is accepting that the principle that compliance with the law is negotiable. And it's nothing different than someone holding up a bank, and then instead of sending in a SWAT team, the government starts negotiating with a person what they're going to give them in exchange, a helicopter, pizza, whatever, just to make the person get out.
Okay. How many, I mentioned you had your own estimates. How many tickets are we talking about here, do you think?
We don't have exact numbers because Air Canada has not been transparent about it. What we do know is that according to public records, Air Canada owes approximately $2.3 billion in advance ticket sales. At a very conservative estimate, that would correspond to about 2.3 million tickets. I believe it's way more than that, but that's just a conservative estimate. And when you look at the entire Canadian airline industry, we are talking probably about 3.9 million passengers' tickets. We're talking about return tickets affected.
Extraordinary. What have you heard directly from passengers on this, Gabor, in terms of what they think about it, how upset Canadians are? It was a real flashpoint issue for many months. What have you heard directly?
Passengers are livid about this. They are upset, and they are still upset about the fact that these refunds, if they are coming at all, they would be coming from taxpayers' money instead of Air Canada shareholders' money. They are also expressing concern that because of how this was mishandled by the Canadian government and the airlines, they may not fly with Canadian Airlines in the future. They would rather prefer American or European Airlines or any other airline that has a track record of refunding passengers and airlines which are in jurisdictions where the regulators have actually upheld passengers' fundamental right to a refund and respect its private property.
So you've heard that. That was going to be my question. I mean, what do you think will be the future if there's a refund check in hand or gone directly into a bank account? Do you think Canadians would be prepared to forgive and forget for Air Canada, or will there be a long-term impact here?
I anticipated there will be some long-term impact. What is missing is a clear, unequivocal recognition that what happened was wrong, a clear apology, and a clear recognition that that money is not just a goodwill, that it has always been owed to passengers. That has to be declared and set in stone that from now on, this type of games will not happen. Once that is done, that may pave the path for recovery.
There has been legal action launched in Canada and the United States, class action lawsuits. What happens to those?
I have no recent updates on those. There is a class action which is to be certified soon, I believe, in Quebec. I don't see much progress in the British Columbia class action. Those are unfortunate collateral damage that the government's irresponsible conduct and the airline's unlawful conduct have caused. There will be extra compensation likely to be paid out to passengers. There will be legal fees to be paid out to those law firms. And overall, all this situation could have been avoided had the government come in, like the European Union has done at the very beginning, and issued marching orders to the airlines. I would like to remind the viewers that in the European Union, the Commission actually sued its own member states that were harboring or encouraging airlines to provide vouchers instead of refunds. So they have been very firm. They came down very hard on those states, and therefore refunds were provided properly. Canada should have done the same, and the long-term economic impact is still to be calculated and accounted for the neglect of what happened.
Gabor Lukács in Halifax, thank you very much for joining us on this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.